Hi, I'm David Harrington. Welcome back to another Turkstra Tips and Tricks. Today I'm going to show you how to use stain. So when using stain, the first thing you're going to want to do is sand your project. I've got some nice trim here actually from Turkstra Lumber's trim mill. So it's already pretty smooth. If you had a brand new project, you might want to start with 80 grit. But to finish up, 120 or 140 grit will be good. So I'll go ahead and sand this by hand. Because there's a lot of curvature to this piece, I'm going to sand it by hand. If you had a flat project, an orbital sander would probably work great. So we'll do that. The next thing you're going to want to do is remove all the dust from your material. As with paint, prep work is probably the most important part of staining. So you're going to want to use a lint-free cloth or a tack cloth. Remove all the dust. So I'm going to be staining a piece of oak and a piece of pine here to show you how it works. With hardwoods, you don't need to pre-stain. With the softwoods like this pine, especially if it was a big flat surface on your project, you might want to use what's called a pre-stain. And that's going to set the piece of wood to allow a lot less blotching, and it's going to be a nice even coat. So there's two main types of stain. I'm going to be using an oil-based stain today. There's also a water-based stain. There's also a bit of a misconception where people say you can't mix water and oil-based stains. With paint, that's true, but with stain, technically, if all the prep work and everything's done properly, you can mix oil-based and water-based stains and top coats. So we'll go ahead and we'll look into applying the stain now. So the first thing you're going to want to do when you open your stain is to stir it. I'm using this mini wax stain. It works really well. It goes on really nice. You probably don't need two coats. And you can visit any Turkstra Lumber if you're in Southern Ontario for all your staining needs. So go ahead and stir this really well. You can't stir too much. You definitely can understir. So you could use a foam brush or a lint-free rag to apply stain. If you're going to use a rag, definitely wear gloves. And when you're applying the stain, apply it with the grain. Go with the grain. A brush like this is going to be good for a piece of trim like this because you can get into all the grooves. So you just want to apply it quite thickly, kind of unlike paint. You're going to put stain on quite thick because once you get the surface covered, you're going to remove the excess with your clean lint-free rag. So we'll get this totally covered. And then we'll get our rag here and we'll remove the excess, and you just wipe it off with the grain, and right away you can see how nice it looks. If it's not quite dark enough, you can do a second coat after letting it dry. You'll get a bit more darkness to it, but not too much. So we'll go ahead and put some stain on the pine. While I'm applying the stain, there's one kind of misconception with some people with stain. Stain is definitely not a sealer. It's not going to seal the material. If you want to seal your material and protect it, you're going to have to use what's called a top coat. And that's going to go on after the stain is completely dry. And that's going to protect it and seal it and add another level of clear to give it kind of a deeper, thicker look. Kind of like how you would use clear coat with automotive paint or any other kind of paint. So the same thing, you just apply it evenly and quite thick, and then wipe it off with the grain. And also, if you're going to apply a top coat, sometimes it'll raise the grain up. After you apply that top coat, you'll kind of feel the grain is rough, and if it's like that, you can sand it with a much finer sandpaper, like a 220 or 240, and then apply your top coat. So as you can see, I mean, what a difference it makes right away to the pine and the oak. So in an earlier video, I made this neat little wooden phone holder out of poplar. I'm going to go ahead and stain that just to show you with this nice knot here how stain can really bring out the look of a nice piece of pine. Pine's kind of an underrated material, I find, these days. You'd be amazed how nice you can make a piece of pine look. So the same thing, a nice thick coat, and then wipe off the excess. So another thing to be aware of when staining is to pay attention to the temperature. Like, you don't want to use stain in your garage in the middle of winter when it's like 20 below. It's not going to take very well, similar to paint. Also, if it's too hot, too humid, it's going to affect the quality of the stain that you're putting on your project. So when you're finished your project, if you're using oil-based paint like this, you're going to need a solvent to clean anything up that you want to clean. For water-based stains, just like water-based paint, it's just a water cleanup. Thanks for watching another Turkstra's Tips and Tricks video. If you like this, definitely think about subscribing for a lot more great content. And if you're in the Southern Ontario area, definitely check out build-it-better.ca. That's build-it-better.ca. There you'll see a lot more great videos like this, a lot of great tips from the pros, reduced pricing on shipping, materials, and services through Turkstra Lumber. And like I say guys, the more you build, the better you get.